Hi everyone, welcome to another table talk. So in part 3 of my intermediate park jet setup series, I wanted to discuss my thoughts and ideas, lessons learned with respect to spoilerons and flaperons on park jets. If you haven't seen the other previous two videos, I did one on control surfaces and then one on rudders. I'll have that playlist linked down below, so if you want to watch those, I encourage you to go check out the link down below. So anyway, I'm just going to move my coffee here so I don't knock that and spill it. Spoilerons and flaperons can give you lots of options. Now hopefully you can see this. I'm just going to flip the switch. So spoilerons essentially flip up, and you know, they tend to help the nose stay up. So in certain planes, they're really helpful for you know, trying to do something like high alpha or some other maneuver, and I'll talk about my lessons learned there. And then flaps or flaperons, you know, like in a conventional airplane, would you know, would go down. So you know, they're flaperons, spoilerons. I suppose I'll show you here with the spoilerons. Now I have these, so they'll still move, you know, in the roll if I move the stick to a certain amount. So they're still, you know, part aileron, part flap, part spoiler. I know, and I've experimented with it, and I know some people, it's personal preference. They will actually flip a switch, you know, if they have the capabilities in their transmitter, flip a switch, sort of shut off the ailerons, and then flip another switch to have just straight on flaps, you know, that are static and don't move. For me, that I just find I get discombobulated way too easy. I'm not a big switchology guy. You know, one of the reasons I don't like flying with low rates, high rates, that sort of stuff. I just don't like to get things too complicated. But you can certainly do that if you want to experiment with that, you know, if you have the capabilities. This is my old steam-driven Turnigy 9X with the ER9X firmware upgrade that I've had for well over 5 years now. ER9X is kind of the predecessor to OpenTX, which is what the FR Sky series of transmitters is running. I'm not even sure that ER9X is even supported anymore. I've tried to download it to revise something, and I keep having problems with viruses and stuff like that. So anyway, but it's a very very powerful firmware, even for the fact that it's been around quite a while. Okay, so again, it depends on personal preference. Excuse me. I know for high alpha, some people prefer spoilerons, you know, to help keep the nose up. One of the issues with spoilerons, you know, depending on the plane, you can end up with, obviously you've got air coming here, and then it sort of gets flipped up, and then it gets, you know, it's dirty and turbulent by the time it gets to your elevons, so that can cause some issues. Some people like flaps or flaperons. Oops, wrong switch. See, I told you I get discombobulated easy. So, you know, some people prefer flaps or flaperons. You know, it allows them to fly nice and slow. It generates a little bit more lift as the you know, as the wing is passing through the air. And also, the thing with flaps is, you know, normally if you're coming in for landing and you want to, you know, kind of slow your plane, or you just you know, slow your plane down, allow it to slow down and land in a shorter distance, and, you know, land nice and soft. Flaps normally are the best for that. I've experimented with spoilerons and coming into land, and unfortunately what happens lots of times is that, you know, the nose will pitch up much more easily, and then you could end up, you know, landing 2 feet above the ground, and your plane body slams into the ground. One thing, you know, you want to do if you are going to experiment with these, I've got my throws, you know, the travel and the spoilerons and the flaps here exaggerated, so hopefully you can see them. I normally probably would not fly with that much. What I would suggest is, this is what's worked for me, is if you do want to experiment with them, set them up and have the throw or the deflection about the same as what you normally fly with in your aileron. Start off with that and see what sort of impact it has. Maybe it doesn't. So then, gradually increase it maybe by 5 or 10% until you kind of get to what you want. And also, if you've never used them before, or you're using them on a new plane that you've never tried them with before, again, be safe. I take my plane up, 100, 150 feet, whatever. I mean, close enough that I can still see it. And then when I deploy the flaps, flaperons or spoilerons, and see what happens. And then that way, if the plane starts to do the funky chicken or something's not quite right, you can flip the switch off, recover, and fly. I wouldn't encourage you to put the flaperons the very first time you come into land, because something could happen. I'm able, if you can, another point, if your transmitter allows you, is I have these set on slow up and slow down. I know some transmitters can't do that, and that it'll just all of a sudden snap, pop right up, like right away. That can obviously make your plane do something fairly abrupt and aggressive. So be cognizant of that. If you can program it in your transmitter to slow it down. I think mine goes from 0 to 10. To be able to deploy them. I think I have it around 5. That seems to work best for me. So that's again something that I would watch for. The other thing is, it really helps if you are going to experiment with the spoilerons, flaperons. It does really help to have rudders, because you're still going to get some, obviously if you get in trouble and you need to fly out of it, and you don't, the first thing you think about is to hammer the power and fly, and you don't get the switch flipped off. Sometimes it helps to have some rudders for you to steer until those ailerons, you clean up the ailerons and you're not dragging them around, or the spoilerons or flaperons and you're not dragging them around anymore. So it helps. And again, if one of your reasons for wanting spoilerons or flaperons is to do some more challenging high alpha flying or slow flying, definitely helps to have those rudders, because then you can kind of bring the nose around in a flatter type of manner, using yaw rudder inputs rather than roll, because then again you could run into issues with it tip stalling on you. One thing, I'm going to link it down below. I wrote, actually looked at it, I think I wrote it like 5 years ago. But back when I was playing around a lot more, trying to build up some skills in high alpha, I wrote an article in our old NAMC blog called Differential Spoilerons. One of the things, if you're getting into high alpha with a park jet, especially like a mid mount like this one, and I'm using just a standard puller. So my prop spins. If you're looking at the back of the airplane, my prop spins clockwise. One of the effects of that is, because of the way the prop wash comes off the prop, as well as torque roll, is when you get into a high alpha maneuver with a park jet, it's constantly going to want to pull around to the left. And if you want to be able to turn to the right, I mean, if you want to fly your high alpha sort of in a NASCAR thing and always turn left, then don't mess around with it. But if you want to be able to turn more easily in both directions and have your high alpha balanced, what I found is, especially in this situation, is when I deploy my spoilerons, and let me just get the right channel here. Okay, so I think I'm in the right channel here. So just deploy them. So if they're deployed and they're deflected evenly, the plane is still going to naturally want to go this way. So one of the things that I found was, if I set it up so that I deployed my right spoileron, in this case, so that it went further. So I've got it as fully deployed as I can. And again, this is something you have to experiment with. So what that did was having, you know, differential. So having, if you're looking at the back of the plane here, this is, you know, my spoilerons. If I had more deflection in my right aileron, it helped to you know, keep the plane from pulling so much to the left in that situation. And then obviously if it was, so yeah, it goes down quite a bit slower because it's deflected further. And then obviously the opposite would be if you were using flaperons, you would deploy, if they're down, wrong switch. You know, if they're down, then you would want to put more deflection on this flap or experiment with it than to help keep this wing up a little bit more, you know, having more lift under this wing than on this wing, you know, to help it that way. So that's, you know, that's more of a kind of advanced setup, but it's, you know, if high alpha is one of your goals to learn with a park jet, then, you know, certainly experiment with it. And again, take it in just small increments, like increase the deflection by, you know, maybe no more than 10%, you know, fly it around a little bit, land, you know, I mean, you can, you know, within one battery, within one flight, you can, pardon me, you can adjust it 2 or 3 times until it flies the way that you want it to. So again, I'll have that article linked down below. It's far more detailed. There's also some links to articles that my former NAMC partner Stefan wrote that designed this plane, this MiG-35B, my favorite park jet of all time. Not not giving it a plug. Well, I guess I am. And I'll have links down below where you can get these plans. We don't get any money from it anymore. Fortunately, the guys at Park Flyers International have been very gracious, and they have the plans on their site, and you can go there, get the plans. And for this plane anyway, any money that you donate goes to a charity in Indonesia that BMO, the guy in charge of Park Flyers International, runs. So anyway, a little off topic, but there you go. Okay, so getting back, what do I choose? Do I choose spoilerons or do I choose flaperons? Again, it comes down to you know, experimentation, finding out what works for you. And I don't necessarily want to say this as a rule of thumb, but one thing that I found, for example, the F-18 version 3 was the plane where I really cut my teeth on in high alpha. And I'll actually have a link to a video down below that when I was really trying to doing high alpha, I actually flew an entire flight essentially high alpha. I launched it, went into high alpha, and flew it around for 6 minutes or 6.5 minutes in high alpha. So I'll have that link down below if you know you need help getting to sleep tonight or something. But anyway, what I found is in that F-18 version 3, my battery was really far forward. You know, in order to get the plane to balance, like the distance between, you know, the back of the motor and where the front of the battery was nearly half the length of the total length of the plane. Whereas, for example, in this plane, you know, the front of the battery is there. All the main weight, the battery, servos, motor, speed controller is in a much shorter distance. So what I found with F-18 version 3 was it needed help to hold the nose up. So in that situation, I found with that plane, I found that spoilerons tended to work the best. So, you know, to give me that assistance to help keep the nose up. In this airplane, again, I think this MiG-35 or, you know, MiG-35, maybe Sukhois, stuff like that, you know, the Su-27 family, you know, experiment and find what works best for you. I think I've probably found when I do want to play around with high alpha, I would normally set flaps up, flaperons for that. For stealth type wing frames like this T50 version 5 here and like the RC Powers F22, I think you definitely want to go with flaps. Let me just grab this plane for a second here. You know, if you see in this plane, these ailerons here are much closer to the elevons than they are on this plane. And you know, the way this whole thing is all blended together. And I found with spoilerons, and this plane has a pretty razor's edge point where you're flying it slow. So I found with this type of plane and the F-22, spoilerons were really not that good because they deflected so much dirty air directly onto the elevons. So in this situation, I would definitely use flaps. When I was testing the NAMC MiG FA, which was Stefan's sort of conceptual take on a T-50, you know, if MiG instead of Sukhoi had done the T-50, what would it look like? You can get those plans for free in the same link that I'll post down below. I did a lot of slow flying testing on that one to see, you know, what happened, and definitely flaps were definitely the way to go for, you know, the furthest, most aggressive high alpha. Spoilerons couldn't even get anywhere near half as close. So anyway, so there you go. You know, obviously something to experiment with, to play with, to challenge yourself. Obviously, if your transmitter is not capable of it, as I said in a previous video, I still haven't figured out how to do it in this FlySky FSI 6, and I don't even know if I'll even bother with that. You know, trying to figure that out. I think it would have to be going into the 10-channel setup that I've put on that with the software upgrade. But anyway, I'm not going to bother. I've got this good old reliable radio here. So yeah, there you go, folks. If you have any questions, please post them down below. If there's any other videos that you think I should do in this series, please leave your comment below, and I'll either try to answer your question there, or if I think it warrants it, and I can, and I have the knowledge, I'll just shoot another video and add it to this list. So there we go. Thanks very much for watching. Blue skies, calm winds to everyone. Park jet noise, the other sound of freedom, baby. Take care.